as most of you probably know, NFL free agency, or more accurately, the legal tampering period, just happened. So we got a lot of people changing places. We kind of talked about free agents last episode, but now they're actually signed to teams. We got a whole bunch of moves. I won't spend too long introing this because we've got a shit ton of stuff to get to. But before that, we got Josh back. Last time he was here talking about coaching carousel, talking some more NFL today. So happy to have Josh on the program, and
Hey, yo.
we'll jump right into it. Josh, I'll start with you. What do you think about the Brian Burns trade? Brian Burns to New York for second and fifth round pick.
Uh, yeah, very surprising. I mean, Thibodeau and him is really scary now for the Giants. They got a lot of other things to figure out. I don't know what's going on with the Panthers. I do like what they've done on the offensive tackle side of things. I think that's going to help Bryce out. But, we all know what we heard the last two deadlines, right? They had chances for multiple first-round picks for this guy.
Yeah.
At the very least, just re-sign him and then let him run wild again next year and then bring his value back up again. To get a second and a fifth for this guy, I believe is what? He's only 27? I believe he's one of the better defensive players in the league. And, I would say, like, most people don't know who Brian Burns is much is because the Panthers just aren't a sexy team you really want to talk about that much. But he is one of the best defensive players in the league, and now he gets to go to New York. And trust me, people, when he's in New York, are going to know the name Brian Burns. It's an absolute steal for the Giants. It's something they needed because they've had a rough offseason. I don't know what's going on in Carolina right now. That is the leader right now. You guys know the NHL side better than me, so I can't comment on anything on that side. But I think in the four major sports, at least right now, that's got to be the leader for the worst franchise in 2024 so far.
Ooh.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that because I mean it's not just the Brian Burns stuff in isolation. You talked about the multiple first round picks they're missing out on.
Yeah.
If you kind of combine that with some of the moves they've had, you've got the Bryce Young trade, which obviously giving up what turned into the number one pick. You've got only getting a second rounder for CMC, only getting a second rounder for Brian Burns. Even the guy behind you, Simon, was commenting about it on Twitter. Luke Combs was even he was upset about what the Panthers were doing. I don't know. It's at the point where you kind of knew it was going to happen. I'm sure he didn't want to come back to Carolina. The biggest thing was just like they should have taken the offer from the Rams when they had it. And now where they're at the point of no return, I guess this is the most they could do. Probably should have re-signed him, like you said, but
well, it's
who knows if that was
now.
even on the table from him at that point, because they're just a complete dumpster fire of an organization. And I don't know, like, yeah, they've improved their offensive line, but the rest of that team's not looking great. So I don't know how developing Bryce Young is going to go. I have faith in Dave Canales, but I don't know. That's just a rough organization right now.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's crazy to me that we're hearing that they're potentially going after Chase Young now as a replacement.
And Mike Williams.
Yeah, like the fact that they're still trying to build with, like, I wouldn't call Chase Young quite veteran yet, but they're trying to still add that kind of depth despite getting rid of Brian Burns and not wanting to sign him. It's insane to me. And, I mean, you mentioned it, but the package they got for him is depressing as hell. I mean, they definitely could have gotten more, and that Giants D-line is scary as hell now. That's going to be very, very terrifying to watch next year. I'm actually excited to watch that team.
Yeah.
Yeah, at least on defense they've got that. If we want to kind of, I'm just gonna jump all over the place and transition where I see fit because we've got like 25 things to go on. But speaking of the Giants, they lost their franchise running back in Saquon Barkley, headed to the Eagles. Let's see if I can see that. 3 years, $37 million for Saquon. Josh, how do you feel about that deal for both the Eagles and the Giants?
I mean, it's weird. Like, if you're going to let him go, then go and, go maybe get one of these running backs in the draft. I mean, there's not a lot of – it's not a core running back draft, but there is people that people like Brooks and people like Blake Corum, for example, quite a bit. But I didn't get just letting him walk out the door. I mean, maybe it was a similar thing to Jacobs with Vegas where they just, couldn't connect on the money side of things, and then he decides to go to the Eagles, make Jason Kelsey rethink about retiring now. All of a sudden, it's fantastic for Philly. For the Giants, I mean, they bring in Devin Singletary, but we'll see how he goes. It's it's a mixed bags there. Both the two teams in that division right now, with the Cowboys and the Giants, you really wonder what they're doing offensively with the moves that they've been making the last few days here, comparably to their counterparts right now. And Philly just loading up again, getting a great guy in Barkley. And you look at the run per average. I think in DPA, they were top 10 in running last year, the last 2 years, and that was with Miles Sanders and DeAndre Swift. And now you're bringing a guy like Saquon Barkley that has the absolute capacity to be the best running back in the league. All respect to CMC. He has that capacity to be the best running back in the league behind that O-line that has the tush push, even without Jason Kelsey. It's a really scary scenario now. Plus, you have the read options that you're going to be able to have, the threat of Hurts being able to run and the threat of Barkley being able to run. That's like, and you really look at the quarterback play that Barkley's had with New York. He had washed up Eli Manning. Now he's had Danny Dimes. I think he had like a cup of coffee with Tyrod Taylor there. Geno Smith, I think, was there for a second with him. He's never really had like an all-pro level quarterback to be with him. So that completely changes everything now for Saquon.
Yeah, and I mean, you can kind of see the I think it's a steal, honestly, and it's a great way to kind of take advantage of how undervalued running backs are, is to get a guy like Saquon Barkley, where yes, he's a running back, but I think he's a lot more than that. We kind of saw that with CMC, where the Niners only had to give up a second rounder for him.
Yeah.
And I think Saquon could have a similar impact, because I mean, 3 years, $37 million, in the grand scheme of things, is not that much. Because when you look at it in comparison to other contracts, like receiver contracts, would you rather have a Saquon Barkley or like a Gabe Davis, who's who I think got around the same amount. And you can kind of see, like, I think you see the sentiment shift around the Eagles too, where that whole kind of how their season ended is kind of starting to wash into people's mouths a little bit, with how I see them being talked about again, where they feel revitalized. They made the Barkley signing is the big thing. Getting a couple pieces on defense too, Bryce Huff, CJ Gardner-Johnson, like getting him back. It's clear that they're trying to reload, and I think they're doing it in a really smart way.
Well, think about what they've actually lost.
Time will tell.
Other than Jason Kelsey,
we thought this would be the story last year, where we thought they would be fantastic again, and they completely crapped the bed. But who knows? This is a good move and a good start.
Yeah, you bring that up with the crap in the bed, and this is a lot of pressure now on Nick Sirianni now. Like, if he doesn't deliver next year, then he's out. And the shadow and the hoodie of Bill Belichick is lurking over two teams in that NFC East, with the Cowboys and Philly. Of Belichick, just his shadow lurking over either one of those teams of potentially coaching them next year. So both of them, it's really Super Bowl or bust. And NFC, I think there's a few teams that improved quite a bit and found some pieces there. So I don't know necessarily if it's much of a layup for some of these teams. I think, the weird thing is we're going to get to some of these NFC teams, and I know you said you're shifting, but there's always that thing of like 4 teams miss the playoffs every single year. I don't know if that's the case for the NFC as much as like there's going to be a shift of teams, and then, like maybe an Atlanta and New Orleans flip, and then maybe a team like Seattle flips with the Rams. But other than that, like, I don't know how much is going to really flip around in the NFC next year with all the moves that's been made. So we'll see what happens
out here.
We got some bad headphone connection.
Yeah, my headphones are terrible. They always like.
I told you Seattle's going to make the playoffs, and you just got way too excited.
I know. I got way too excited and disconnected my headphones. But no, to that point, I do think that's probably true in terms of just a shifting of where we see everybody, because it is really just a lot of the kind of middle ground teams getting stronger, and a lot of like teams like the Cowboys kind of falling off, not making any signings. But I'll kind of shift things a little bit. We'll talk about another NFC team. We get the Eagles connection in here. Former Eagles running back, DeAndre Swift, going to the Bears. Now I think this one's interesting. This is one of my least favorite signings.
That was weird.
I think it didn't make a whole lot of sense. It happened really quickly in free agency, which is weird. I didn't think he'd be a priority for any teams. Apparently he was for Chicago. Do you feel the same kind of way, Josh, in terms of this being a bit of a head scratcher?
I was surprised because Jacobs had been seen to be so connected to them, and then they went out the Bucks and got Swift. And as a Raider fan, I'm like, okay, sweet, Jacobs does not go in there. And then later I got sad, but that was a little bit of a head scratch, especially because I didn't think the running game was necessarily an issue with them, with Roshan Johnson and with Khalil Herbert. I thought both were pretty decent fits at running back. Swift is a good running back, but I didn't think, and even having Dante Foreman, who was injured, but I do think he's a good back. He's still a free agent on the market. I think some team will get a steal getting him now in free agency on the cheap. But I didn't think running back was a need that they had to get. But, they figured with wherever they're going here in their future, whether they're going to go with Caleb or Marvin Harrison or whatever they're going to do, who knows, with the Bears, that they had to strike forward and get that, other running back to really hit the mark. So, yeah, it was weird they came out the mark, but Swift is a good running back, and it's a nice fit in that offense that's really rounding out nicely in free agency here.
Yeah, it really is, and we'll get to, maybe we can get to the other move they made in a second here, but I think, I don't know, I think I somewhat agree in terms of their running attack being pretty decent. I do also understand the need to try to go out and get a little bit of a bigger name, a little bit more of a high impact guy, aside from Khalil Herbert and Roshan Johnson. Because I think we even talked about this a little bit on our last podcast, was identifying that as a bit of a need for them. But DeAndre Swift is not the direction I would go. Like, DeAndre Swift feels like such a marginal upgrade from what you had. If you're getting some of the other guys that were out here, I understand it. But like paying him that much money, signing him for 3 years, like that doesn't make a whole lot of sense for me. He had a great season in Philadelphia, but I think a lot of that was a product of his surroundings in terms of the offensive line he had and the system he played with that was just designed for the big kind of bruising back like him to go in and get a ton of yards.
We talked about their O-line, right?
Yeah. It's the kind of thing that he's not going to have as much in Chicago, and that kind of scares me a little bit. I don't necessarily see him as a running back that can thrive if the surroundings around him aren't very good.
They still have the worst running depth in that division.
Yeah.
As far as running back rankings, right? You'd probably go Lions 1, Packers 2, and then probably Vikings 3, and then 4.
Yeah. Especially here, maybe this is a good point to transition into Vikings and Packers, because Vikings and Packers, I think we kind of link those together just because Aaron Jones says goodbye to the Packers and goes to the Vikings on a 1-year, $7 million deal, and then the Packers replace him with Josh Jacobs.
With all the moves that I've seen,
two moves and that kind of.
With all the moves that I've seen, Aaron Jones, that one I almost completely forgot about. Like when you mentioned that the Vikings were third on your list, I honestly thought that was weird. I was thinking to myself, I don't even, Cam Akers? For a second, it took me a second, but yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. Like that absolutely changes that Vikings team. I mean, we don't really know who their starting quarterback will end up being.
Probably J.J. McCarthy.
You think so?
I'm penciling in J.J. McCarthy, Drake May right now.
Oh, okay. Well, whatever it ends up being, that Vikings offense, depending on who their quarterback is, might end up looking actually pretty dangerous. I think they'll be a fun team to watch.
They did some good things defensively, too. Overall, I mean, that NFC North, everyone just has the Lions going. I have right now the Packers winning the division right now. But, man, that division is a tough division. I mean, we still don't know what the Bears, just to go back to the Bears, I don't know what's going on in this Justin Fields situation. I think that's the hottest conversation you'll have with your friends right now of what to do with Justin Fields. I think we're at the mark now. There's just no market for the kid. There's no market. They want a second, but no team's going to give them a second because they know they have to get rid of the guy. So why would we give you a second when he's your problem? He's not ours, and we don't know fully what he is yet. Plus, he's in his final year of his rookie deal, and then we have to pay him. So why would I do that when I can take a chance on Michael Penix or Bo Nix or go crazy and maybe see if Jordan Travis and then me is okay?
Yeah. I don't know. I do think I've always been a big Justin Fields supporter in terms of, I think any team, giving up a second round pick for Justin Fields doesn't feel that crazy to me. I get what you're saying. It's a terrible situation for them because at this point, everybody kind of knows that they're drafting Caleb Williams and everybody kind of knows that they're trying to trade him, which depreciates his value a lot, I think. But if I'm a team and the price for him, it's like nobody's biting on a second round pick, I'd absolutely throw a third round pick at a guy like Justin Fields, because I feel like um, the longer we go away from having watched him play, it's like he was actually relatively, like, he was pretty good. It's
The
not
second
like
half
he's
of
a
the
guy like,
year, the second half of the season, he was very good.
absolutely. It's not like, because you think back to, I was listening to another NFL podcast that compared this to the Sam Darnold trade to the Panthers, and I believe Sam Darnold got a second, and Sam
Yeah.
Darnold was a complete flameout in New York,
Saw
and
ghosts.
Fields hasn't been that. Yeah, he's not. He's exactly. We haven't seen that from Fields. Fields has been up and down. He's a bit mercurial in terms of, like, you don't know what you're going to get from him week to week, but the promise is there, and in a way that we never saw with Sam Darnold. I don't know. I just think he's being really undervalued, and I think that whatever team trades for him, whatever team gets him, is going to get something super special, honestly.
Yeah, I know. I don't want to get to the AFC just yet because we're still in the NFC, but I know my Raiders were connected to him for a second, and it seems like the negotiations broke down pretty quick, and that's when the Gardner Minshew signing happened. We'll get to them in a bit, but there's still a market out there. I mean, you look at a team like New England, they could absolutely be a landing spot. I am shocked that Denver has not been part of this conversation at all. Like, Denver right now, their quarterback is Jarrett Stidham, and you have teams like the Vikings that are going to be drafting ahead of you. Vegas is said to be going to be very aggressive in this draft, and it sounds like Denver is just like, oh, we'll just wait. Like, you're going to wait. You're going to be looking at
You're running out of
Bo
quarterbacks. You're running
Yeah,
out of
you're
quarterbacks
going to be looking at Bo Nix,
yeah.
who I like Bo Nix, but, you know, Vikings now got that Texans pick. They're going to be able to trade up right away. And, you know what, it could be too, Caleb, is some of these teams might just wait to see how the draft pans out on draft day and then go for Justin Fields after that.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Like, let's say Vegas, you know, for Vegas or Denver, for example, the board doesn't go the way they wanted to go. Vegas has been looking at some corners, Brian Murphy from Texas, for example. They take him and like, you know what? Okay, we got our defensive player we wanted. We didn't. We thought maybe, you know, Drake May would fall or maybe J.J. McCarthy would fall to us. You know, we're not sure about Penix with the knee and Bo Nix, who knows? You know what? Bears, let's talk. Let's do Fields. Maybe that happens on draft day.
I was going to say that that's a good point, because I feel like that is kind of a draft day thing where it's like after the first round plays out, and the quarterbacks have kind of settled at that point. That's probably when you see them pull the trigger.
Well, they probably don't want Caleb coming in and answering the questions all summer with him and Fields and who's the quarterback and all that kind of stuff. And we already know that Caleb and his dad can be a bit dramatic about stuff. So I think you need to just avoid that. And we know from random sources as well that the whole locker room still prefers Justin. And of course they do. Justin's been their guy for the last handful of years. So if you still have Justin Fields there, the guys that have been playing with them, I mean, the DJ Moores and everybody else there, they're going to root for Justin because he's been the guy in the locker with them, not Caleb Williams.
Yeah, you can't. Yeah, exactly. You can't go into the season with both of them on their roster. I think I would be shocked if he's still there after draft day. I would be like, after even like, I wouldn't be shocked if that's something that gets done before the end of the first round, just so that like, or it kind of settles and people start asking Caleb Williams all these kind of questions that it's not one that he has to answer, to your point.
Remember, too, so a team, again, like Vegas, that has been linked to him probably the most heavily, the Raiders can't really do a trade for him until after June 1st right now, because the Jimmy G and the Hunter Renfrow contracts don't come off the books until that post-June 1st cut. And that's the problem with a few of these teams. So, I mean, but I don't know how I don't know if you, Caleb, these June 1st salary restrictions and cuts and whether people can sign or not is confusing the living hell out of me. Because I was told Russell Wilson can't officially sign until after June 1st. And then here we go today. He's officially a steal. I'm like, okay, I don't know what's going on here.
Yeah, I think they'd still be able to make it happen. I think the big thing, again, I'm with you. I don't really know the intricate details of it. Another example in terms that you bring up in terms of the Jimmy G thing, I mean, he has already signed with the Rams as of today.
Yeah, but he's technically not cut until June 1st. That's
the thing. I don't think they're, again, I don't know the rules. My kind of understanding of it is that it's not that strict. I think the biggest thing is that they're like cap compliant. by the new league year, which has already
I
happened.
think that's what it is. Yeah.
So I think they would be fine to make that move.
Yeah.
And honestly, like, GMs are smart and the cap isn't real. Like, they'll find a way.
Yeah. Look at the Saints.
Yeah, exactly. If we want to just kind of end off this Bears discussion, talk about Caleb Williams likely coming in, is going to have one extra target. Yesterday, the trade was made for Keenan Allen for a 4th-round pick.
What? The Brian Burns trade was not ideal. This is the worst trade.
Oh, sure. And I know a few Chargers fans as well that are just devastated. Like,
you know Chargers fans?
I do. I know. It's crazy.
Wow.
And the funny thing, not only do I know one, I know two, and neither of them are happy about it. I mean, why would? Yeah, exactly.
This has been your guy. You had a 4th for Keenan Allen?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess they were talking about cutting him, so at least you got something.
Yeah. It was the kind of thing I thought would be avoided after they cut Mike Williams. I think I underestimated just how bad their cap situation was, because it was like, you're going to have to do something where they restructured Joey Bosa and then they cut Mike Williams, and you think that's going to be the end of it. And then this move happens. And it just doesn't make a lot of sense. Like, who's Justin Herbert going to throw to at this point?
Quentin Johnson. And I mean, they're probably going to draft.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a very scary scenario in the draft where the Vikings can trade up and take that Cardinals pick. And then they go take J.J. McCarthy there. Let's say if the Pats don't want to move. And all of a sudden, Marvin Harrison falls to the Chargers. And holy crap, Marvin Harrison's dynasty stock is just through the roof.
Yeah.
If not, Neighbors is there, Oden's is there. They have it's a pretty stocked receiving draft, so you're going to be okay with the wideout side. There's some interesting wideout projects you can go with. You can go with the Odell Beckhams. You can go with the Michael Thomases. I mean, you can try to do the Higgins trade, but with everything that's going on with the cap, you're probably going to have to trade Bosa or Khalil Mack to make that work, though.
Yeah, and I think with the moves they've made, I think they're making it pretty clear that that's not the direction they're going to go in. That they're going to try to keep Bosa, try to keep Mack, and get rid of a guy like Keenan Allen. I mean, it's really rough because I believe Keenan Allen has been a Charger his whole career, right? And he's been there for forever. So it is kind of an unceremonious way to go out, which really sucks. But it's one of those things, just like the Brian Burns trade, where it's great on the other end of it to take advantage of this kind of a situation, because now if you're the Bears, you've created such a great situation for Caleb Williams to walk into, which is one of normally the biggest things that's an issue about drafting a quarterback first overall. And I think it's something that you mentioned Caleb Williams and his dad. I think before they were talking about, like, oh, if the team's not right, like, we'll go back to college. Like, and that was a conversation before he had to declare. But that I don't think that's going to be the case here, because they've got you got DJ Moore, you've got as much as I don't love it, you've got a decent running back in your backfield, and now you've got Keenan Allen too. Like, these guys got
Gerald Everett and Cole Kmet, so decent 2 tight end set.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, they absolutely have the chance to be a good offense.
Doubt, but
I do too. I mean, you had to deal with him, so.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the Bears I think for the first time in a while, the Bears have like a legit offense, and maybe finally have a quarterback for the first time, really since Jim McMahon, probably the best quarterback in the history of the Bears. So all respects to Justin Fields right now, or Rex, unless you're a big Rex Grossman fan.
Yeah. It's gonna be an exciting, interesting team to watch.
Yeah.
Speaking of,
I guess just go ahead. Sorry.
Speaking of exciting and interesting teams to watch as of now, the Falcons have been firing off free agency moves. So we'll just kind of talk about them as a whole. We got Kirk Cousins is the big one, but they also brought in Darnell Mooney, signing him in free agency, and then flipped Desmond Ridder to the Cardinals for Rondale Moore, which I think is a sneaky good deal. What do you guys think about the Falcons?
Simon, I'll let you go.
Sure. Well, we talked about it last week as well. I know, Caleb, you wanted the Falcons specifically to go after Justin Fields, because I remember you thinking that was a really good move, and I think by the end of it, I partially agreed with you. But I really don't hate it. I think Kirk Cousins is going to have the opportunity here to use all of these weapons really, really well. I think this Falcons team absolutely has the chance to be I mean, sneakily good. They have such an insane offense. I mean, you mentioned it as well. Their defense, not that bad. Not that bad. They definitely have the potential to surprise a lot of teams, maybe take that division. I'm excited to watch them. I'm sure I'll tune into a couple Falcons games this year. I know I'm a little higher on Kirk Cousins than a lot of people are, so that also could be part of it. But, I mean, I like what they've done. I don't really know what they could have done better other than maybe go after Fields, but at that point, no one's going after Fields, so that just feels like a nitpick.
Well, he got the Netflix bump, right, Kirk?
Yeah.
I feel like the Netflix doc kind of changed everyone's opinion on Kirk Cousins because they loved him so much from the Netflix doc.
Very likable dude.
Yeah, he's very likable. I think everything they've done offensively has been great. Defensively, I mean, they're still waiting for Calais Campbell and that decision. They left Jeff Aduka to the Texans, who I know we're going to talk about the AFC, and I think the Texans won free agency. They've killed it. But overall, offensively, they've done great. I mean, say what you want to say about Kirk Cousins. He is a steady, safe quarterback.
Yeah.
And, if you're a fantasy player, okay, this is the year. You're talking yourselves into this is Kyle Pitts' year. This is Kyle Pitts' year. It's finally going to happen. But, they have an opportunity now to see what happens with Kyle Pitts and see if he's worth paying. Drake London, see if he's worth paying. Bijan, you talked about backs like Saquon, Caleb, not just being a running back. And Bijan, we know, is so much more than that. And I think he saw Gibbs in Detroit kind of passed him in the rookie running back conversation last year quite a bit, and Jahmyr Gibbs. And Bijan has that potential to be a catcher and to be a runner and to be a CMC level running back. And now that he has a guy in Kirk, he has that opportunity. Got a good coach there with Raheem Morris. So I think everything there is right. And you look at the division, that arguably is the worst division in football right now.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Like, you just don't get, I can look at every single division like, oh, okay. Like, I would say the second might be the AFC West is pretty bad right now. That's probably the second worst division maybe now all of a sudden. But, we're not having conversations about Carolina. The Bucs are, good, but they've lost some defensive pieces like Murphy Bunting and lost Devin White.
They're definitely not better than they were last year.
No, and then the Saints are the Saints, and it depends how much you care about Derek Carr and what he could do. And the Falcons, I thought, were the best team in that division last year. It's just Arthur Smith's not a good coach, Desmond Ridder's not a good quarterback, and they shit the bed in games they should have won.
Yeah, pretty much. And I think you talk about the Texans winning free agency. I would almost argue that the Falcons have won free agency, or they're up there. But I mean, Kirk Cousins is the big piece, and I mean, solving their quarterback problems. You even had, the quarterback problems were bad when their new coach is coming in and saying, "Oh yeah, I wouldn't have this job if we had a better quarterback." That's when you know it's bad. So getting a guy like Kirk, who again we talked about on the previous podcast, I was more of a Justin Fields guy in this spot, but I think that's just because I'm higher on Fields than a lot of people are, and I thought they would kind of go with a more like, try to develop a little bit more, try to wait it out, and maybe wait like one more year until you like fully go for it, try to develop Fields. They're going for it now. And I think that's what these moves indicate, where you bring in Kirk, who is a very much win now guy because he's 36 and coming off an injury. And then you make a whole bunch of moves to bring in even more weapons around him. The weapons would have been good anyways, even if you didn't add Darnell Mooney and Rondale Moore. But now you've got like an excellent, like one of the best receiver trios in the league, I think, at this point. Plus Kyle Pitts, plus Bijan. That is an insane offense, and I think it can take them pretty far. I wasn't completely sold on the Falcons' offense with just adding Kirk Cousins. I think the Mooney and Rondale Moore deals honestly put it over the top for me.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, anyone else in that division, there's nothing else to move me. There's no reason to even talk about anyone else in that division. They haven't done anything. I mean, for Carr, it's gonna. I dealt with this as a Raider fan. Like, he just continually learns a new offensive playbook, and he's going to be learning another new one this year. So it's always a step back when he has to learn a new playbook. So it's a step back there for the Saints, who I guess you would say, even with all respect to the Bucs winning the division last year, you probably still say the Saints are the second best team in that division. But it comes down to the play of what Derek Carr is. And I don't even know they don't even have a backup right now because Winston went to the Browns. So the Saints have all the talent in the world, just like the Falcons do. It's just, can they rely on Derek Carr to be what they need him to be?
Yeah, and he probably won't. And I mean, even then, the Saints, they're also stripping parts away faster just because of the way they are in the cap. I feel like they're always going to be about a 9-8, 8-9 team. I don't think much moves the needle on that, honestly, just because of how they're kind of stuck in neutral at this point. But if we want to move on to I didn't really design it this way, but we have kind of been talking all NFC. If we want to flip over the card, talk about some AFC stuff.
Well, no. We got to talk about your division.
We got to talk about should we wrap up the NFC? We can talk about.
You got my guy.
We should have been crossing some of these off here.
My man Sam Howell's now in Seattle. I called this on our podcast.
You called this. That was one of the first things I thought when I saw the move. You called it, and I was it was one of those things when you brought it up that I didn't. I honestly hadn't considered. I think about the one thing with this. If I'm to give my opinion on the Sam Howell trade now, I think that I don't love them giving up. I know it's just a pick swap, and we downgrade from a third to a fourth, so it's not like we're giving up a third-round pick. But I still don't like a pick as high as a third being thrown around in there. I don't know. It seems like a little bit more than I would have liked to give up, even if it is just moving down around. Our draft capital is looking kind of rough, especially because we don't have our second rounder from the Leonard Williams trade. I really like that John Schneider came out and immediately was like, no, Gino's still the starter. Like, we are trading for him to be our backup. I'm very glad that they did that right out of the bat, and that we didn't have – I mean, we're still going to have these storylines anyways, but hopefully we have less stupid off-season storylines. It's like, oh, Sam Howell's coming for Gino's job. I don't know. Like,
he's coming.
Trust that at all.
He's coming. So here's the thing, and everyone listens to the 7K pod knows I'm entirely biased towards Sam Howell because he's a former Tar Heel. So I'm going to put that out of the way. But, look what Sam did last year. This is the guy through 60% of the year was leading the league in yards passed and was up there in touchdowns and had no offensive line, no real help. And now he gets to go to a team with three major weapons, an O-line that still needs help, but has a really good running back core back there, much better coaching that he has. So I think, it is Gino's job. Make no mistake about it. This is Gino's job, but you could do worse than Sam Howell as your backup. I mean, all respect to Drew Lock in the game he had against Philly. I think that's a game the Seahawks fans will always treasure, that Drew had that game. Best of luck to him with the G-men. But Sam Howell as your backup, you could do a lot worse.
Yeah. And I do think it's a smart move in that regard, just because of, especially after what we saw last season, with as many backups that got playing time. Like, I completely agree with that. Like, if we're just looking at this move purely from you got probably one of top. I don't. Is it too much of a stretch to say top 5 backup quarterbacks? If
I don't think
up
so.
there
Sam,
even
if
more.
you looked at all the quarterbacks in the league, Sam is a top 35 quarterback.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think again, and it also is the kind of thing. I know we're Simon, you were kind of mentioning this before we hopped on here, but it's very much because the conversation was whether the Seahawks are going to draft a rookie or not. I still think it's a possibility, but he's definitely someone you can develop too.
I mean, if they end up drafting a rookie, do you run with 3 quarterbacks at that point? That's more my question as to what Seattle's
I saw
to do.
Penix for them for a lot of drafts before they went with Howell, and now I don't know. I don't think you're looking at a Penix or a Bo Nix. You're maybe looking more now at the Spencer Rattlers, the Jordan Travises, and I think a team will take a Jordan Travis, but they probably will put him on the injury report. For those that aren't familiar with Jordan Travis, he was the FSU quarterback this year, and their bowl hopes kind of got dashed, unfortunately, because Jordan Travis's injury, and the collection committee were a bunch of cowards and didn't want to have FSU play because Jordan Travis wasn't the starting quarterback for them anymore. Really good quarterback, but very serious injury. So a team like Seattle, if I were them, why not take Jordan Travis down the road and be like, you're not
How
can
far
just
do you
chill.
think he's going to fall down the draft class?
It depends on the medicals. I mean, I think this is going to be the same thing with Penix, right? Like the medicals are going to probably sink both these guys. I think Penix is the fourth best, third or fourth best quarterback in this draft. But because of the medicals for Penix, he's going to fall down because of those knees. And for Jordan Travis too, I think he could have been even ahead of JJ McCarthy beforehand. But now those medicals are really going to hurt him. He could fall as far as the 5th or 6th round.
Ooh.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And you got to think Seattle would be more than okay with doing something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot of picks to spend on backup quarterbacks if you group it together with the Sam Howell move. Yeah. But I don't know. If I was Seattle, I definitely would be scared.
You just put him on IR and just let him take the season. I mean, not enough teams do that. You know, I mean, I'm sure you guys talked about this for the NHL trade, like what the Vegas Knights do for their injury side of things, right? I mean, we've seen it more in the NBA more recently, right? Like you look at, you know, what Chet Holmgren did last year, right? Chet probably could have came back and been part of the push for the Thunder to make the playoffs, but like, why would we bother? So I would do the same with the Jordan Travis this year. And if you're Seattle, you're weighing your quarterback options right now. Gino, is this the last year of his contract, Caleb, or is it another year?
I think
this is the last
year. And even if it's not, it's one of those things where they can get out of it very easily.
Right. So, you know, he'll have Howell breathing down his neck. And if not, if you decide to draft somebody else, then you at least put that pressure onto Gino. I mean, you look at that Seahawks set, shouts to Tyler Lockett, man. Like, put that guy up in the rafters, like restructuring his contract. Every Seahawks fan I know, like, loves that guy. And there's a reason why. Like, restructuring that contract, man. They're fantastic. And, you know, the running back core that you get to have there is great. You know, I love everything that Seattle has this year. I just thought the defense was a little up and down, and I thought there was 2 games I watched that Gino I thought lost for them last year when they could have won, but he was injured last year. So you get a healthy Gino, and now they have a quarterback that, like I said, for a good part of the year was leading the league in yards, and if they need to make the moves, they know they have a guy that can possibly, you know, have big games. I think the biggest set of games you remember for Sam Howell were those games that the Commanders had against the Eagles, and he looked unbelievable in those games.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, I know that John Schneider even mentioned, talk about the Eagles game for Sam Howell, but also the game he had against the Seahawks was another good one. I was there in person in Seattle watching that game, and the Commanders kept it close with us, and he had a pretty fantastic game. And they played well above my expectations and almost sent me home crying. But it was obviously the big. If we want to wrap up the Sam Howell stuff, it is very much a boom or bust kind of thing too. I think that's another important thing to mention, because yes, he led the league in passing yards for a lot of the time. He led the league in touchdowns, or not led the league, but had like 21 touchdowns or whatever it was. But he also had like 21 picks.
He did. He went 21 and 21. So he's got to clean that up. He did have some very sloppy picks.
Yeah. And that's the fear.
So he's got to clean that up.
But that's something that can hopefully be coached out. That's, I think, what the Seahawks are probably betting on.
But, I mean, in your division, before we move to the AFC, there's not a lot really to talk about. Like, the Niners didn't make anything explosive. I've liked everything the Cardinals have done, but it's nothing, like, mind-blowing. They got Desmond Ritter as a backup. They got Murphy Bunting. They got Bilal Nichols. Smart, clever moves. And then I guess the big one is now, Caleb, it's okay. The bad man is gone. The bad man is gone. He can't hurt you anymore. He can't hurt you anymore.
It's so nice.
Aaron Donald.
That was one of the since the Seahawks have done kind of nothing all the free agency. I think that's the best notification I've had crawl across my phone screen. It's the kind of thing where I obviously, especially in like the prime Russ years, I feel like that was when he was most a thorn in our side, especially because he was in his prime. That's when he was racking up like 20 sacks or whatever it was. It's crazy to see Aaron Donald go this early into his career. Only been there for 10 years.
Yeah, it felt like it wasn't surprising though, honestly, because we've been talking about it
after the Super Bowl.
Yeah,
he talked about it after the Super Bowl. I'm surprised McVay stayed now all that time. McVay's got to go coach Jimmy G.
Yeah, I mean the Rams still have a good team around them. I mean they've got good young.
They got a first round pick this year.
Yeah, for the first time in forever. They they were able to retool through the draft so well last year.
God,
Like it's
so good.
very scary as a
Yeah,
Seahawks
they
fan.
drafted so good. They drafted very, very good. I do think, like I said, I do think the Rams and Seahawks will switch places this year.
Yeah.
In the NFC, like we talked about before we moved to the AFC here, like I don't see the NFC changing too much. I see Bucks and Falcons switching and Rams and Seahawks switching. And I mean, I don't really see much different really in where everything goes. Maybe a Dallas falls out. I mean, we didn't really talk too much about the Cowboys because there's nothing to really talk about. There
They
was
didn't
this
do
bizarre
anything. Yeah.
Stephen Diggs rumor that I think was just the internet trying to do something because there was nothing super exciting happening this afternoon. So like, hey, maybe Stephen Diggs get traded for Michael Gallup. But yeah, yeah. So Aaron Donald's Hall of Fame, no doubt. Anyways, let's move to the AFC.
Yeah. AFC doesn't have quite as much, honestly.
No.
We'll start. We'll go. We'll. I think we'll start with what I think is the biggest signing in the AFC, and that is Derrick Henry going to the Ravens. I think that's a really exciting one. That's
that's
for
scary.
anybody in Baltimore.
That's scary. I mean, they did lose Patrick Queen to the Steelers.
Yes.
But that we talked about, option with Barkley and Jalen Hurts. How's about option with King
That's gonna
Henry
be
and
so fun to watch.
Lamar? Holy crap!
Oh,
yeah.
It's gonna be such a pain in the ass anytime you play them. Because I mean,
like that.
People don't talk about it as much, but Derrick Henry is still stupid quick. Like,
you look at all his stats last year. I was looking at his stats and StatMuse. I didn't realize how good he still was last year.
Oh, absolutely. He's still an insane running back. And I think in that backfield, it's going to be... I mean, what do you even do on an option? Like, I don't got an answer for that. Like, it's just... That offense is going to be so fun to watch this year. And, I mean, if you thought the Ravens were good this year, I mean, sure, they lost Queen. That's gonna hurt them a lot. But, I mean, offensively, they've pretty much just gotten better.
Yeah, offensively they got better. Defensively they've lost some pieces and they lost Mike McDonald to Seattle.
Yeah, that's
so
true.
Defensively I have a few questions for them, but they just draft so well. So I'm just gonna let them just figure out the draft and see what they do because again they just draft so darn well.
Oh yeah, and it's the kind of thing with talking about the option and running that with Derrick Henry and Lamar. I think one of the more underrated aspects of this kind of backfield is the fact that they'd have a guy called Keaton Mitchell back there too, and he was super impressive, and he is such a great complement to Derrick Henry because whereas Derrick Henry you've got obviously known for being big back that can like take down anybody. You think of the stiff arm in the playoffs against the Ravens, you think of all that kind of stuff, and then Keaton Mitchell is the perfect complement to that in providing speed, quickness. It's such an amazing changeup, and then add what Lamar can do on the ground on top of that. I don't know, like that's something that's super exciting to me if I'm a Ravens fan. It's just looking at not just Lamar and Derrick Henry in terms of what they can do together, but also what you saw from Keaton Mitchell last year. Like that's just like by far and away the best rushing attack in the league. If they already weren't that, honestly, now it's just to another level.
And their division didn't get better. The Bengals got worse right now.
Yeah.
The Bengals, defensively, not that much better. Offensively, it's a mess. The Browns are the Browns. We'll see how the piece of shit is at quarterback next year. And, I did like them getting Jerry Jeudy. That was a nice move by them.
Yeah.
And Winston's the backup there. Hopefully he's the starter. And, the Steelers got Russ, so we'll see how Russ cooks.
Yeah.
I mean, $1.2 million for Russ, sure.
That is one of my favorite moves.
Steelers country, let's weld.
It's black and gold, let's go, apparently.
That's not too bad. Maybe it's my biased Seahawks fan talking in me that remembers the glory days. But if you can get Russell Wilson for literally the veteran minimum, I don't know.
Yeah, I thought it was a really good move.
He's going to be significantly better than
I think it's a good move. You look at his stats last year. they're not as bad as what everyone thinks there are. And there always is a narrative that we start collecting towards about a player, and then it gets
Yeah.
dissipated. And here's a narrative that's 100% true. Sean Payton's an asshole, and he didn't want Russ to be the quarterback last year. Never really gave him a fair shot. Always wanted his own guy in there. But you look at Russ. Yeah, Russ lost him some games last year, no doubt. But going in that system now with Tomlin, the weapons that he's going to be able to have, and I know they traded Johnson to the Panthers, but he's got George Pickens. The Steelers are going to draft whoever at wide receiver, and he's going to be the next great receiver because that's what Pittsburgh does. He's got a decent run game there, an amazing defense, and I think that's the one really good thing from, like you kind of mentioned, Caleb, with those old Legion of Boom teams, he gets to kind of do this with the Steelers now. Let Hayward and Watt do what they do in the rest of that Steelers defense, and you just do you. Not too much pressure in. Just don't blow a game for us. And I thought they could have beat. Was it Buffalo they faced in the playoff game?
Yeah.
They had no Watt in that game, and I thought they were really close to beating Buffalo in that game. They just needed slightly better quarterback play. That's what Russ gives.
And I think the thing with Russ is you don't have that big contract sitting over you anymore. You're only getting paid $1 million from the team that's you're playing for. And I mean, you're obviously making a lot more, but I mean, with Russ on that team, like you mentioned, Josh, I mean, sky's the limits. I mean, we don't know what we're going to see out of him. If we're going to see him return back to even just a fraction of what we saw in Seattle, or if we're going to see the same quarterback from last year, either way, I think it's an upgrade. I think the Russ we saw last year is still levels above Kenny Pickett. So, honestly, if I'm a Steelers fan, I'm not worried. I think you've just gone better. Like, even if you don't see the same Russ that we've seen in the past, I mean.
And they just added Patrick Queen to that defense with Howard and Fitz. And it's and JJ and TJ Watt, that's a scary defense.
Oh yeah, and I mean it always has been a scary defense. The offense was always their issue. I think my one worry would be, because I know Russ's stats last year, like you said, Josh, like they are a lot better than people think. Yeah. I do think a lot of that, the issue with that is a lot of that was inflated by the fact that it was garbage time, and also lots of short stuff, lots of yards after catch. There's I don't remember what the stat was exactly, but some sort of crazy stat about what percentage of his throws were 5 yards or less. That is not the Russ I knew in Seattle. You kind of get scared in terms of Arthur Smith being the offensive coordinator. A lot of what he does is stuff over the middle, and that's not something that Russ is very good at. It was never something he was good at. He wasn't good at it in Seattle. He wasn't good at it in Denver. That might be something you have to change. And Arthur Smith is not necessarily known as a person who is good at adapting and changing what he thinks when he probably should. Cough everything in Atlanta and learning how to use the talent that he has. That worries me a little bit. But honestly, like Simon, you made a great point. I think the pressure in Denver was a huge thing. Not only just the contract, but what you brought up too, Josh, in terms of when your coach hates you, like that isn't great either. The pressure of the trade and everything, basically forcing his way out of Seattle. He doesn't have all of that now. Like the expectations are low at this point.
There is one expectation though, because his Hall of Fame bubble has burst. This guy's not a lock for the Hall of Fame anymore. He needs 1-2 more good seasons to be a Hall of Famer.
Yeah. That is the kind of that's I think an interesting conversation. As a Seahawks fan, I think he gets I hope he gets in anyways, even if he doesn't have those 1 or 2 good seasons.
It is close.
Because it is close. And I think people really undervalue just how good he was from about 2016 to 2019. I always
quarterback.
Yeah, I always think that that if Lamar didn't have that insane season where he was the unanimous MVP, Russ would have an MVP because he was so good that season. He just happened to be a quarterback at the same time as Lamar Jackson in that year. I do think he should be there, but I do understand that I have bias having watched him every Sunday for 10 years. So you're probably right in that he does need those extra seasons, but at least it's not something that is as continuously pointed out and continuously on your mind as the other stuff would have been. in Denver, because that was just a pressure cooker waiting to pop
Yeah.
at that point.
The bring up that Lamar, I was in Seattle for the Monday Night Football game that year when they faced the Vikings, and everyone was just like, because Lamar had that really good game that Sunday, and we were in the bar, and people were like, fuck, Russ has to have a good game tomorrow against the Vikings. Like, I think Lamar just got MVP from that game, and Russ had an okay game, but the chatter coming out, they had this great comeback on Monday Night Football against the Vikings to win the game and everything like that. Everyone's like, that was great, but I think Russ lost MVP.
Yeah. Yep. I remember that season really well, because especially with how, because you're right, he kind of lost it on the stretch, but with how he was playing in that first half of the season, I really thought he had it. If we want to kind of transition away from the AFC North, we'll go to the AFC West, and I'll just tee this one up for you, Josh, with your Raiders.
You want to talk about defense?
Well,
you want to talk about defense? You want to talk about defense? Mahomes, bring it. Good luck dealing with Christian Wilkins and Max Crosby now, AFC quarterbacks. Have fun. And I think, the one thing I love that both these guys say they're going to try to bring Tyree Wilson along because he had an up and down rookie year at the ankle. Michael Coombs, who no one talks about, is fantastic. Panda Jack, who we got from the Patriots, who is an absolute stud back there in the secondary. He likes to eat. You can see the Antonio Piercing's infection to Wilkins right there. That defense, oh, baby. Yeah, look at him giving the Hadouken right there. It's, man, it's exciting. And this guy is made for a Raider. This is like, going back to the old Raiders, like Jack Tatum, Ted Hendricks level type of Raider. And Max Crosby has instilled that in there, and Antonio Pierce has instilled that in. This is the most excited I've been about a Raider defense probably since 2002, when we had Chuck Wood and we had Bill Romanowski and Darren Woodson and a lot of key pieces on that defense that took us to the Super Bowl that year. Offensively, good. Quarterback is it's something. Gardner Minshew, little ass boy, as Max Crosby called him. I like Gardner. I think he's a solid quarterback, and AOC was good last year, but this is where, the Justin Fields conversation does come back up of the Raiders are a quarterback away from being a team that is you're dealing with as a playoff contender. They're not a Super Bowl contender, but as a decent playoff contender. And I'd say even right now with the Wilkins move, they'll push for a wild card right now. If you look at that, I mean, they're the second best team in the division right now, I would say. I don't think that's much of a competition the way things are going right now. But that Wilkins move, man, that went down nice. Losing Josh sucks, but Zamir was so good down the stretch that you can afford to lose a Josh Jacobs when Zamir White was as good as he was. And I don't know about you, Caleb. I don't know if I ever believe in paying a running back. Not that much, not $12 million, as much as I love Josh Jacobs and spent $300 on his jersey. I'm in a good place right now with Vegas. The quarterback situation needs to be shored up, but Wilkins and Max, good luck.
Yeah. I think, to the point of paying running backs, I think I'm of the opinion that you pay them if they are a true difference maker type, like a Saquon Barkley or a CMC, but there are very few of those guys, and I don't think Josh Jacobs is that. So I think reinvesting that on the defense and probably using some of that extra cap space you get to get a guy like a Christian Wilkins, I think is a much better move. And I think his defense is super exciting. I think with all the moves that they've done, they're showing that they don't want to rebuild and that they want to come out and compete for a playoff spot right away. We'll see how that goes in the end, but obviously it's super exciting for now. Quarterback is the one thing they have to shore up. The Gardner Minshew contract, I thought, was a lot of money. That was kind of concerning.
How much are they paying?
It's not as bad as you think with incentives and everything. It's not as bad. It's only like six guaranteed or something like that. It's not that bad.
Oh, okay. No, that's not terrible.
No. It's 12. Okay. It's 6 and then plus guarantees. I think that's the thing when the people see the 12.
Yeah.
That's how much Jacobs got, but it's like 6 or 8 million, and then it's like plus like if you get the Pro Bowl, if you get a starter for this many times, and all this kind of stuff in between it.
All right.
Yeah.
Which, as much as I would love to see Gardner Minshew in a Pro Bowl, I don't know what the odds of that are. And I mean, even if he does make it that far,
he just was.
Was he? Oh, never mind. I'm dumb.
Yeah.
No, that shows you how much I know about the Colts.
Yeah.
We can kind of shift to your rival if we want to keep it in the AFC West.
Sorry, just as we're doing this right now, we have the ACC tournament going on right now.
Yeah.
And North Carolina State just hit a buzzer beater to tie the game up.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh. Who are they? I saw they beat Duke. Hey,
they did beat Duke.
Who they're playing now?
Virginia. So this is the face North Carolina right now.
Ooh.
Yeah. Anyways,
I gotta get myself more into college basketball, man. It's not the one sport I've never. I get into March Madness if there's a Cinderella team, but past that, I'm like.
We got the women this year. That's all you need to know. We got Caitlin Clark and everybody there, but it's in the AFC West really quick because we don't need to talk about the Donkos at all because they're nothing.
No.
But Hollywood Brown went to the Chiefs, and it just got me really bummed out for like the last 24 hours.
That's a really good pickup for them, I think.
Man,
because the one thing,
a decent receiver.
I was about to say, the one thing that Patrick Mahomes has been missing, other than, I mean, sure you've got Kelsey, but past that wide receiver room is. I mean, they were able to win with it, but it's pretty depressing. I think Hollywood Brown instantly just turns that around for them. That is such a good move for him. With Rice, the way that Rice was playing last year, that too, yeah.
Like, man, and they got a decent tight end too. I can't remember who they got for tight end.
Irv Smith.
Irv Smith, yeah. So I was like, ugh.
Yeah. God damn, Chiefs continuing to be good at football.
and they re-signed Jones, and then they got to figure out Snead. If they get Snead back, then my goodness.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to get Snead back.
I hope not.
Well, cap room, like you said, the cap doesn't exist, so we'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he's already requested a trade, and it's like I don't know. Yeah. Like I don't think that's going to happen. I think I just don't think they'd be able to make it all work. For a positive for the Chiefs, though, like. I don't think they're done adding at receiver because I think that Marquise Brown is just the start of it.
I could even get Mike Williams.
I was thinking that. I don't know if they have the cap space to make that work necessarily, but what I would be scared of is adding someone in the draft. And if one of those second tier receivers kind of falls their way, I'm thinking like an AD Mitchell from Texas, like, ooh man. Yeah. That would be rough. That would be rough to deal with.
I've seen Brian Thomas fall to them somehow. I was like, no.
Ooh, yeah.
Or Franklin or Keenan Coleman.
Yeah. It's a deep receiver class because you've got the top three, but then you've kind of got this next second tier that they're probably going to have their choice of guy, like at least a few guys left from that tier where that rounds out really well. That's really the only move the Chiefs had to make this offseason, honestly, is just signing one, like, kind of 1A or like a 2A, 1B type receiver like Hollywood Brown, and then you can kind of build from there.
Give me that Thursday game when they open up. I want Raiders and Chiefs. I want Raiders Chiefs Thursday night. Let's go. Let's go. We beat them on Christmas Day. It's the highest rated regular season NFL game. Give me Thursday in Kansas City. Let's do this.
Oh yeah. If we want to move into, why don't we talk about the team that you thought won free agency, Josh? We'll talk about the Texans. You got Danielle Hunter is the headliner. We want to talk about that one.
Yeah, you want to talk about, as much as I'm happy for Wilkins and Max, you want to talk about him and Will Anderson together, and then they added Jeff Okuya in the back there with Will in the back there, and then they added Mixon. Like, this is a nice team that they got going at Houston. Dare I say, like, I probably would put Baltimore second behind KC. This is the third best team in the AFC to me right now. This team is just top to bottom, just a scary football team. Like, you want to talk about one of the quickest rebuilds, like, as someone that's been a Raider fan and has only seen the playoffs 2 times in 20 years, I'm like, why can't we do this? It's this simple. All you got to do is draft a CJ Stroud, get a great coach like D'Amico Ryans, and get a generational talent like Will Anderson, and then build a free agency. It's not that hard.
Walk in the park.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, they're
great.
it's actually crazy because I mean they were fantastic last year. I mean, making it to the divisional round with a rookie quarterback and with a lot of young pieces, all in a first-year head coach, that is insane enough as it is. And then to add on top of that, I love the Joe Mixon thing. That especially jumps out to me as a great piece because I know I was hoping for Saquon to go there. That was kind of my pet project, Saquon landing spot. But if you're gonna have a consolation prize, having it be Joe Mixon for a 7th round pick, I mean, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
I think that yeah, like we said, Daniil Hunter across from Will Anderson, I think that'll be great, especially in terms of like taking a little bit of the pressure off him to produce to like a Pro Bowl level right away. Like having someone opposite him, I think will be really good for him. Um, yeah, it's just all around. Having them be third in AFC, I don't think that's too far fetched.
No,
I
like
don't
this
have too
team a
much
lot.
else to add on it because it's just like they had the cap space and they went for it. Which I think when you're trying to maximize CJ Stroud's rookie deal, that's something you have to do, right?
Yeah, it's what the Hawks did with the Legion of Boom and Russ, right? And you got the two
Yeah,
Super Bowls out of it. Probably should have two. Um, and I look at a team in that division too that kind of had a similar path, but the Jags spend money, but it's just like chaotic. It's very much a Tony Khan and the Khan thing. If you follow AEW, and just like, yeah, we'll get this and get this and get this because we have the money and we can do whatever we want. It's kind of like what AEW does. It's like this doesn't all make sense, but screw it.
yeah. Because they don't pay Calvin Ridley and then they pay Gabe Davis and they're kind of all over the place with all it doesn't because the Jags were kind of where the Texans were a couple of years ago when they're
They got
coming
to
off
pay
of that.
T-Law next year.
Yeah, where it looked like they were gonna, because they were obviously terrible with Urban Meyer, but then
Yeah,
they come back, they have that huge win against the Chargers in the
all the
playoffs, and
KC.
things are looking good, and then it's kind of you had them kind of fall off a cliff at the end of last year, missing the playoff. Like it's not looking good for them there, especially now that you've got the Texans coming in as the clear favorite to win that division again.
Yeah,
It's yeah. It does
yeah. I
seem
mean
like
that
they're panic spending.
it does. That's such a weird division. It's so interesting. Like the Titans are so weird. Like I thought they'd bottom out, and they got like an interesting offense, bringing in Ridley and bringing in Pollard. The Colts didn't do a lot, but they got Ant coming back, and they just re-signed their guys, and they were right there. Like that's a really interesting division. The Texans are at the top of it, but I don't know where everything else goes in that division.
Yeah, yeah, that's a weird one. I don't know if we want to move on to. I think the only division we haven't touched on is the AFC East, which I don't think there's a whole lot to touch on there, frankly.
Buffalo
They didn't.
got everybody. The Dolphins got Shaq Barrett, got Poyer. Like they kind of fixed some things
The,
defensively a little bit.
the one I would like to highlight for the Dolphins is Jordan Brooks as a Seahawks
Yeah.
Yeah,
fan.
that hurt.
That is an absolute steal.
That's a steal. I like that move
That
for
is the
them.
worst thing the Seahawks did all off season was not bring him back because the Dolphins got him for incredibly cheap, and he is so much better than people
No,
think he is.
the
And
worst
he has
thing you did
continued to
too
get
is
better every
release
year.
Quaylon Diggs. I still don't understand releasing Quaylon Diggs.
Yeah. I mean, he. I understand it to an extent because one of the big issues that we had at the end of last year was tackling, and
Mm-hmm.
Quandre was never a good tackler. Like he
Mm-hmm.
that the Jamal Adams one was the obvious one, and
Yes.
you should have maybe kept Quandre, but I'm not like furious about it.
Who's in the secondary now? Is it just Kobe and Michael Jackson?
Well, because you got Tariq and
Yeah,
Witherspoon out there on corners.
Yeah.
You got Julian Love at safety.
Love.
Yeah.
They also just signed guy from the Jags, Rayshawn Jenkins, who I think I don't know if he's going to like start for us or anything, but I think he's a pretty average NFL player. I wouldn't be shocked if they continue to kind of address safety potentially through the draft. Yeah, Jordan Brooks is the one because safety was our big hole, but now we've created another gap by not bringing him back at linebacker. And I think the Dolphins, we may even trade linebackers. I know the Seahawks were looking at bringing in Jerome Baker, which I wouldn't mind, but I don't know why you don't just keep the homegrown guy. And the Dolphins are going to get a great player. Jordan Brooks has been fantastic for us.
Well, they didn't want to lose Wilkins, but they just the cap where everything goes, and they got to pay Tua soon here.
Yeah,
that they didn't have a choice. They had to let him go. I wouldn't be shocked if the Dolphins draft a receiver. By the way, just because Tyreek was so up and down at the end with those injuries, that I think they just want to be safe, just in case with those injuries, just to have a third guy. It may not necessarily be in the first, and we talked about it, Caleb, how deep this wide receiving class is. They will draft, I think, a receiver in the second or third round.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I think it's obviously not their number one need, but it is kind of the thing where I do think you talk about paying Tua. I do think that's maybe a little bit more of a question, and it's kind of a prove it year. But I do think if you want to give Tua the best chance to succeed, Tua's probably only as good as his weapons are. And so giving him another one, I think that'll help a lot, because I think it was sneakily underrated how little depth they had past Waddle and Hill. Because once you reached that, and once one of them went down with injury, it was kind of falling off a cliff.
I guess the other thing, the Pats have done fine. Getting Jacoby, getting Gibson, they've done fine. I see the elephant in the room is the Jets. And they did a really good job today getting Tyrone Smith. I think they've killed it fixing that O-line. But
Morgan Moses, I believe, as well.
Who's going to be behind center? That's the question all of a sudden now, because could Aaron Rodgers be with RFK in November?
Yeah. Oh, don't get me started.
That feels like a fever dream.
Yeah. Like, none of this is a sports pod. It's not a political pod, so we will stay away from any thoughts on that as much as possible. But it's, I did like the tweet of like Aaron Rodgers missing game election night.
Yeah. Oh my God! I don't need to go into any more of my Aaron Rodgers rant.
Yeah, I was about to say
this. If Aaron's going to do this for his attention grabbing, at least have the wherewithal to let the Jets know sooner rather than later. Because right now Tyrod Taylor's there and Zach's there, but this would be a team that would definitely trade for Justin Fields. So maybe let the Jets know if you're going to retire and be a vice president for RFK.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if we're gonna give Caleb his Aaron Rodgers rant, this could go on for another hour. So I don't know if we want to. I don't know if we want to step in that zone.
Anybody who listens to the podcast knows that I think he's a jackass and stupid. But I think
you don't say.
Oh my God. I don't think it's gonna happen though. This reeks of like off-season bullshit headline.
He has the overwhelming odds too to be it. You know who number 2 is for the odds makers to be the vice president for RFK?
I don't even have a name to throw out with him, so no.
It's Jesse Ventura. That's where we are right now.
That's great.
Oh my God.
Yeah. At least Jesse Ventura, I guess, has some political stuff when he was the governor of Minnesota, but. Yeah, anyways, this is not a political podcast, so we'll move on.
Yeah, probably smart.
Yeah.
Well, what do we have left at this point?
I think that's pretty much it. We kind of...
Unless we want to hit on the Commanders.
we were good.
We kind of already did.
Kid Neckler was a good get.
Yep.
Yeah.
Kevin Durant.
Bobby Wagner.
Seemed happy about that one.
Yeah, I got Bobby Wags. I wanted him. I wanted Wags.
Nah, watching him last year was a bit painful. He's not quite who he used to be, and I was sad to see him go because of how much of an icon he is to the Seahawks, and I will continue to. He will be still one of my favorite players from the Legion of Boom days. He couldn't cover anything anymore, and
he's going to his jersey retired.
Oh yeah. Like this is me talking about him now does not impact what I think his legacy with the Seahawks is, or what I think of him as a player in his peak. He is not that anymore. He can't cover anything right now, and that was honestly one of the biggest problems with their defense. So I'm not shocked and not too sad that we didn't bring him back. But I don't know. Go Commanders. I'll be happy if he does well. But we'll see how that.
You pretty much
turns
traded
out.
him for Sam Howell.
Yeah.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Overall, I think it's been a really fun free agency. But this draft is going to be just as exciting.
Oh yeah.
It's going to be a fun offseason as a whole. I think there's going to be a lot of different moving pieces, even continuing into the second half of it. I mean, it's going to be a great time. Josh, thanks for joining us.
Always.
Yeah, always is fun. Yeah.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. And best of luck with everything going forward. And thanks for being part of FTN.